Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the podcast where we watch, review, and discuss every horror movie on Netflix. I'm Patrick, and I'm back as usual with Chris.
Hello.
And Steven.
Hi.
And it's good to be here with y'all today to discuss Hollow Man, my pick for this week. But, as usual, before we get into that, it's time for horror catch-up. What have y'all been watching, reading, experiencing, etc. in the horror sphere lately?
I watched some real life horror. I watched I watched the beginning of I think the newer season of 90 Day Fiancé, which is always a horrific experience. And I found out there's not one but two people on 90 Day Fiancé from Michigan in this season.
I mean, Chris, not to take the off-cast onto on-cast, but before we started today, you were like, Patrick and Steven, I don't know how you have the time to watch all this horror shit, but you're over here watching 90 Day Fiancé. So, I think that's the answer, is watch less 90 Day Fiancé and more horror.
Well, there's reasons for that I'm not going to get into, but then there's also reasons why, like, you can put on 90 Day Fiancé and not watch it and do other things. While, you can't watch a horror movie, although this is how some of us watch our Amon movies, but
I was going to say, I got a lot done during Hollow Man.
I was going to say, I should not tell you how I watched Hollow Man.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
Or how many times I rewatched Hollow Man to miss all the things that to catch all the things that I missed while not watching Hollow Man the first time.
See, that's disgusting to me. You watch a movie, This explains it. This answers my question. How do you get the time? This is how you get the time. You're only half watching this shit. So that explains everything. You just put stuff on because with the TV off, you have to face your own loneliness and the void, and you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Steven, what have you half watched this week?
Actually, okay, there is one of these that I did not half watch. We'll save that for last. I've been on a tear, guys. The weather's been just up and down. I'm an introvert. I'm a nerd. That's why I'm on this show. And I packed in a lot of time to watch some interesting stuff. So first of all, I finally watched the Stephen King adaptation from the, believe, late 90s, The Night Flyer.
Yes. Well, let's just say this created a discussion in our group chat. Where it was pitched to me as an invisible vampire that pisses blood.
That movie.
You see it's in a bathroom. Our main actor, whose name I'm blanking on, even though he's like famous, you guys love him. I love him. Not George C. Scott. I wish. Different movie.
Liam Neeson. He's famous actors that me and Chris love. Ed Harris.
He's in the bathroom of like a seemingly empty airplane terminal or airport, they call them sometimes, and he just sees in the mirror red piss forming in the urinal, and he realizes it's the vampire, and you can only see the piss because you can't see a vampire in a mirror. And it's one of the most perplexing, hilarious, and frankly creative decisions I've ever seen in a movie.
Miguel Ferrer.
There we go. Thank you.
R.I.P.
And he gives it his all in every second of this movie. He is always doing weird shit when he's in the background, making interesting character choices when other people are talking. Love it. So that's my rambling weird pitch for The Night Flyer. It's a good time. It's a movie that, like The Mangler, I think, another Stephen King adaptation, sort of, that I think I'm going to revisit every couple of years because it's got this like underdog, shitty charm to it. But I can tell at least Miguel Ferrer cared about what he was putting out there. I feel like we got to briefly touch on the teaser for the new Cronenberg movie, Crimes of the Future. We saw about a minute and a half of footage. He has fully returned to horror. He hasn't made a movie in general in almost exactly 10 years, and that was certainly not horror. And yeah, I don't know, Patrick, I know you watched the trailer. It looks pretty wild. There's a lot of kind of extreme body modification going on in it.
It looked like a banger. It's like literally 1 minute of footage. I'll reserve my judgment on it until I see the actual movie, as I do with any movie. I feel slightly suspicious, though. It's like if Steven Spielberg came out with a family-friendly sci-fi film right now, because I just feel like Steven Spielberg has moved into a period of his life where he's not really doing that shit anymore. You know, he's making sober period dramas, which is also weirdly kind of what Cronenberg has done a lot of for a while. But that 1 minute of footage did look really fucking good.
You know, listen, Cronenberg, he his early work, he obviously a man who's got issues with his body. He's been working through for a long time, and they went away.
Or someone's body.
And he decided he was going to make some mob movies with Vigo, and then COVID happened, and he gained the COVID-15, and now he's having body issues again. He's got to work through it again.
This is Cronenberg's entire filmography is about his body dysmorphia, is what you're saying.
Yes, his specifically. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I'd love to do a whole kind of reanalysis of all of his films through that lens. Okay, last thing, guys, have either of you fucked around with the Apple TV Plus show Severance with Adam Scott?
You don't want to hear my story about that. I watched the first episode and I fell asleep for the last half of it, which is not to say it's bad. It was a Sunday morning. I was dragging ass. It's very chilly and slow paced, and I was not in the right mood to meet it where it was. I hear it's great though.
It's fucking fantastic. I watched the whole season over the weekend, just like 3 episodes at a time, because once it gets rolling, I couldn't get enough. And it's got kind of everything. Like, it's very Brazil. It's got a lot of like Alex Garland sci-fi energy in it. There's a little bit of kind of a Twin Peaks Lodge 49 vibe to it.
Oh, God damn
It's very funny at times, but it's also very sad at times. It takes, the central premise, if you've not heard, is that there's a company called Lumen that has this experimental new procedure that allows you to literally sever your work self from your real life self. In this show, over the course of 9 episodes, and there's gonna be more because it does end on a reveal that necessitates more information to come, it does not leave a single stone unturned as far as that concept goes over 9 episodes. Like, it just gets into so much of the minutia of like the practicality and the ethics of doing this, but that's not the focus. The focus is really on these people trying to figure out who they really are. Once they realize that there's something wrong, they can't leave this office. They wake up there every day. When they walk out the door, they come back in, and they want to know, like, what is our job even? They're given these like very creepy menial tasks of literally sorting through numbers, and sometimes the numbers get, in quotes, scary, which means they might be like on to finishing their task, but it's so stressful that they have to get up and walk away. And there's a lot of horror in it, which is why I'm bringing it up. It's not a horror show, but in every episode, there's at least an image or a moment that sent chills all the way down my spine. And the secret sauce on top of all of it is a very unlikely romance between characters played by John Turturro and Christopher Walken. And it's one of the most...
What? That's a spoiler. I didn't know Christopher Walken was in it.
I mean, his name is in the credits at the beginning of the episode, the first episode even.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, even though I don't think he shows up until the second or third.
Maybe I slept through that, too.
It's not a spoiler. It's just a way that 2 characters meet, and then that opens up the world quite a bit, and it's so charming and lovely to see those 2 greats like playing gay men who have this like kind of open workplace relationship.
Steven, I was fully ready. I had heard great things about this show, but I was fully ready to just consign it to that great dump heap of like must-see, critically acclaimed TV that everybody is talking about, and then the world moves on to another thing 6 weeks later. But your combination of the description of Brazil, Alex Garland, and Twin Peaks, I got to go back. Speaking of must-see TV, I'll make my awkward comedy segue that I've been finally making my way through, Euphoria, and that's filled with horror. But
it's horrific.
It is pretty horrific so far. I've been enjoying the first season, at least. I'm very curious to see what I get into with the second. Been on the Silent Hill train for the last 2 weeks. Chris will hopefully be happy to hear that I finally have given into his peer pressure and been playing my way through the clunky mechanics, but generally very cool atmosphere and intriguing plot of the original Silent Hill 2.
I don't feel like you gave into my peer pressure. I feel like I recommended the game and you said no, and you played it and you said I hate this, and then I feel like It Slays podcast decided to review the movie, so you decided to watch the movie.
You're right.
And then you said, oh, you know what? I want those guys to like me, so I'm gonna play the game.
You know what? You're damn right. I was trying to be kind to you.
No, it's condescending. It's condescending.
You exposed me.
So, yeah. You can talk about it with your real friends.
It Slays podcast, my real friends over at It Slays podcast reviewed the Silent Hill film from 2006, I want to say. I watched that, which was exactly fine. But it did intrigue me enough to make me go, I want to go back and see how some of these iconic monsters present themselves in the game and why this captured so many people's imaginations in the first place. So been enjoying the game. It's still a little frustrating. It's still a little slow. I'm moving through it slowly, but I'm committed. I'm going to get to the end, and then I'm finally going to give Chris back his PS2 that he loaned me.
Yeah,
along with his friendship, so that I can move on to my new friends at It Slays podcast.
I can't wait for that part. But the iconic monster thing, it's kind of like Alien, though, where it's like Pyramid Head is so ubiquitous, and like part the subtlety and the like what's going on, what is this thing sort of stuff in the Silent Hill game, I feel like added a lot of spookiness to Pyramid Head. And after you see like your fifth sexy bobblehead nurse at a convention, it probably doesn't hit the same when you see a bobblehead nurse in the game. So I don't know.
So I mean, what are you saying? So like basically you had to be there for the original Silent Hill 2 to understand the true.
No. I'm just saying, like, my experience with Alien is I watched Alien after I'd been overexposed to the xenomorph, and I don't think it was nearly as scary as it would have been otherwise. Because
Wait, did the xenomorph expose itself to you? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Where on the doll did the xenomorph touch you, Chris?
So I'm just saying that, and it's not. It's anything. It's any sort of horror thing. I feel like once it moves from the source material into pop culture, and you're exposed to it that way, it's kind of hard to understand why it became popular. I think maybe.
I mean, I disagree with that, actually. I mean, I've been playing my way through the game, and obviously I had seen Pyramid Head, for example, before, and then I also saw a different interpretation of him in the movie. But I mean, when I saw him in the game, I was like, yeah, that's fucking spooky. It's surreal. It's creepy. I get how seeing it for the first time in that specific game in grainy, shitty, like graphics of the era would have been like, what the fuck is that? And who came up with that shit? I guess I see how it could be more intense.
Just let me gatekeep.
Yeah. All right. I'll leave you to your gatekeeping.
I've been waiting to call you the ultimate gatekeeper this whole time that he's been talking about. So,
yes. Speaking of,
if you've seen me smirking over here,
listen,
that's what I was trying to do.
I opened the gate and Patrick said, "Fuck you." So now the gate's closed.
Well, speaking of people trying to gatekeep access to their inventions, let's talk about Hollow Man.
Whoa.
Hey!
Well
Hollow
done.
Man.
Hollow Man from Paul Verhoeven, one of my and Chris's favorite directors. I don't know,
Wait,
Steven,
what about me?
I was just about to say, I feel like I can lump you in this crew too. I mean, you don't share our obsessive passion for like Basic Instinct, but you're a Verhoeven fan, right?
I've seen Basic Instinct at least 5 times. Like, I don't love it as much as you guys do, but I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a master.
Paul Verhoeven's one of like
Dutch master.
3 directors that I aspire to own all of their works on Blu-ray.
Ooh, who are the other 2?
James Cameron and John Carpenter.
Okay.
And he like James Cameron is easy because he doesn't have that many films, although some of them are Dutch and not available on Blu-ray, such as the title's on the tip of my tongue, but there's a Dutch film that he made that is sort of a predecessor to Basic Instinct.
Are you talking about The Fourth Man?
I think that's it. Yes.
It's like I've been trying to find that fucking movie since I was in high school, and it's impossible. I mean, I'm sure it's on like YouTube and VHS quality now, but
like some have even gone as far to say that Basic Instinct is like a remake of The Fourth Man. So I'm very curious to see it because Basic Instinct's one of my favorites. But I don't know. We could talk about him all day. But yeah, the movie is Hollow Man from 2000, which I think this was at kind of the end of his great American run. Where
this was his last Hollywood film.
Was it his last?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And he's apparently very disappointed with this movie. which
Well,
gave me a little bit of pleasure to read.
If you don't know who Paul Verhoeven is, he also did RoboCop. He did Basic Instinct. He did
Total Recall.
Showgirls,
of course.
Starship Troopers.
Showgirls. Yeah. So he kind of had like
just some of the greatest fucking films of all time. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's weird because it's like he made movies in Europe, and then he came over to America and got in the Hollywood system and made really successful, popular, well-received movies. RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, and then he made really poorly received, not as good movies, Starship Troopers, which has gotten some recognition more recently.
Was Starship Troopers poorly received when it came out?
Oh yeah,
because that's a brilliant movie.
The satire
bizarre,
really escaped a lot of critics.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people took it at face value and were like, "This is just a shitty, cheesy action movie."
But
it was marketed that way too, so I didn't even really want to see it when it came out.
Yeah.
Even though I was probably, the target audience.
But people generally got RoboCop, right? I mean, I guess there was probably equal amounts, maybe not even equal, but there was some degree at least of people understanding the satire mixed with people just thinking it was a fun action movie and enjoying the fascism of it all.
Yeah, I think with RoboCop, you don't need to be on board with the message as much to get entertainment out of it. I don't know. I don't know,
yeah.
but then like Showgirls was the same thing, where like Showgirls, people just thought it was stupid, trash, dismissed it, people hated it, and then Hollow Man, people didn't like as much either. So then he went back to Europe. He said, "You guys don't deserve me."
I'm gonna go and make movies about rape and horny nuns.
Yeah.
Well, what has he made since then? Like before Elle, I'm trying to remember. Like what else was he doing before?
He made like a World
He
War
made a
II
Nazi movie, right?
He made like a World War II period.
The
movie.
Black Book, I think it was called.
I don't know. It had a
like
a Dutch title or a French title or something.
And I have to admit, like, as much as I love Verhoeven and think that people are idiots for not understanding the intent of, say, Starship Troopers, I've seen Elle twice, and I don't quite get it. I'm not on the Elle train. Sorry, that wasn't actually supposed to be a joke. I guess it sounds like a joke, but it wasn't supposed to be a
funny
joke.
Though.
Anyways, Hollow Man's about the Invisible Man. It's basically an Invisible Man story.
That's all you need to know. It's
Kevin Bacon is the Invisible Man. I don't know why they didn't call it the Invisible Man, although I do like the title Hollow Man. And Kevin Bacon is a cocky ass scientist who has been testing invisibility technology on various animals. And right at the beginning of the movie, basically, he and his colleagues, played by, among others, Elizabeth Shue and Josh Brolin, successfully bring a gorilla back from being invisible. And basically, it's time for human trials. However, Kevin Bacon is a cocky motherfucker, and he doesn't want it's the army, right? Like the military who are his employers. He doesn't want them to have control, basically, of his technology. So he deceives them, and he decides to test it on himself. And shit goes sideways from there because the transformation makes him even more of a fucked up, shitty son of a bitch than he was to begin with.
Now, that's an interesting point you just made, because they definitely do talk about how you go, like, the animals that they've made disappear, start acting aggressive after they've been gone a certain amount of time. So I think it's reasonable to assume that Kevin Bacon, Sebastian Crane, right? That's his name.
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable to assume that the invisibility makes him go crazy. But actually, Josh Brolin has a line late in the movie where he's like, "Was it the serum that fucked you up or the power?" Because he's not a good guy. And he's pretty much the same guy at the end of the movie that he is at the beginning of the movie. He's just invisible.
And he's also like seemingly invincible as well and murderous.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a cold-blooded killer at the beginning of the movie, but he's the kind of guy you can imagine could be under the right circumstances, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's trash at the beginning. He's just emboldened trash at the end, I think.
And he's trash in a kind of a specific way. And I have to, so this is my second time watching this in a year. So it was pretty fresh in my memory. And I felt this way more strongly the first time I watched it than the second time. But he's a creep in a kind of a specific way that we now know, like tech bros are creeps and stuff. I don't know who like sort of the model for this sort of guy would have been in 2000 when they made the movie, but he is reminiscent to me of, you know, like a Elon Musk or a Mark Zuckerberg or somebody, so like a narcissist who just thinks that they're literally, he says, I'm God, because he is good enough at doing things on the computer, and he doesn't think he should answer to anybody, not his employers, not the government, not his coworkers, not ethics. And you see sort of how that plays out once he's given infinite power by being invisible.
I don't know if I have a take on that. I hadn't really thought about whether he was a tech bro or not, but yeah, sure.
I mean, that's just how it lands with me watching it in this age where it seems like so much of our lives are being run by psychopaths.
Sure, yeah.
I think also maybe the reason it's not called The Invisible Man is I think Universal might have the rights to the Invisible Man or something.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know.
I was mostly joking about that,
probably
but
put
it's
a trademark on it. But Hollow Man, I was always wondering though. I've always dissected these titles like Hollow Man. What's in that title? Is it trying to say something? Is it the emphasis on hollow? Is the emphasis on man? You could read it a few different ways. I don't know.
Is it like
it's kind of like the
Hollow
invisible man? Is the emphasis on invisible or man? I don't know.
Right.
No,
right.
It is interesting though, Chris. I did kind of play with that, turn it over in my head a little bit too. In the end, I'm curious to hear y'all's takes on what it meant for you, how it resonated with you. I feel like that's a good word to pair with hollow.
The title?
You know, I don't think there's any sort of thematic substance to it. I think it's mostly because he winds up wearing a mask for much of the movie where you can see straight through his eye holes, and he appears to be hollow inside, and they couldn't use obviously the term Invisible Man for legal reasons, and it's just a good title. It draws you in. What the fuck does that mean? Hollow Man. It's just a good title. I don't think there's much more to it than that.
I think there is, but maybe we can save that discussion for the spoiler room when we get deeper, or not.
I'll say what I think. Okay. I don't think that, I don't know if this is intentional or not, but again, I just kind of got hung up on the man aspect of it, and especially being a little, I guess, prejudiced by my prior knowledge of Paul Verhoeven and his fascination, especially with sex, thinking of, how does this guy use his power? Well, it's not a spoiler to tell you that he does a lot of things that 14-year-old boys would do if they were invisible, and he, creeps on women to a pretty disturbing degree, and that's kind of his main MO, as a matter of fact. And I just thought that there was just something about him being a man that was exacerbated, I guess, by his transformation, and that might be where the emphasis is in the title. But I doubt it's intentional. That's just how it resonated with me.
But I guess that's what I'm saying is I don't think that title's particularly deep. I mean, okay, like, yeah, this man is hollow. There's not a lot to him. There may be significance to that title, but it's fairly shallow to me, I guess. I don't know, unless there's some code that I haven't cracked.
At the end of the day, I think
to see what Paul says about it. Our friend Paul,
our old friend Paulie,
yeah,
Paulie
our
V.
buddy.
No, I mean, I agree with you. At the end of the day, if it's intentional and there is significance to it, which I did read into the film, it's still like it's not like a mind-blowing title or anything.
No. Even that shallow reading of it sort of adds a lens to how you're supposed to feel about this guy that isn't really in the text of the movie, I would say.
How so?
Just him being a hollow person, a person like a body with no soul, a man who there's nothing to him except his ego and his menace. Like, he doesn't have he doesn't have anything in his life except for his work. I mean, we see that. So I just think that it kind of tells you, draws your attention to an aspect of him that you might otherwise not appreciate.
I think
I would agree with
that is all in the text of the movie, though. What do you mean it's not in the text of the movie?
I mean, yes, it's there, but I wouldn't say it's emphasized. I mean, this is a pretty slight movie. That's kind of my main complaint with it. This movie's about an invisible man who goes crazy and does mayhem. I don't think the movie itself really invites you to think about this man's character and this man's life and who this man is as a person. He's just an invisible man.
I think the movie, I'm sort of with you, but I take a little bit of umbrage with your description because I think we mean the same thing. I think the movie tells you who he is on a surface level immediately. I think the title also kind of gears you up for if you are turning that over in your mind before you see this movie or in the early moments of it. Like, I think like the amount I don't know, what am I trying to say here?
It's not a deep movie. It's not a deep movie. We're trying to make it deeper than it is right now. It's a movie about a shitty guy who is shitty and becomes shittier because he is invisible. And that's full stop. It's not RoboCop. It's not Starship Troopers. I'm not sure what the criticism of this movie generally is, because I know it's generally poorly regarded. And I guess I'm skipping to my review right now, doing that thing that we do so often. But
that's fine.
It's a simple little horror thriller. It's about a bad guy. He's a bad guy. What else do we need to know about him?
He's a bad dude. I mean,
he's
he runs a bunch of bad boys.
He's a bad dude. And like the movie is full of like the lamest sort of historical and philosophical references to the point that he makes a couple of jokes or references multiple times, but to different characters.
Yes.
Which I thought was actually kind of brilliant because it does show you that it just makes him seem like even more of a fucking asshole. He's so obsessed with himself that he recycles his own jokes. But like, there's nothing to read into those either. Like, yeah, you can put a reference to Da Vinci in your movie, but if it's just an offhand joke that Kevin Bacon says twice, as like once before and once after he becomes the Invisible Man, like it doesn't give you anything to chew on. It's like trying to trick dumb audiences into thinking that it might be a little bit smarter and deeper than it really is. That was a thread that I kind of picked up on a couple of times in my experience with this movie.
Yeah. I was interested about who wrote this and what else they've done. The writer of this also wrote Air Force One, which is a good movie,
and is the creator of Castle.
I've never watched Castle. Have you watched Castle?
I've just seen bits and pieces of it. I've heard that it's a generally good-natured show about Nathan Fillion being Nathan Fillion. Basically, it seemed it was interesting to me because from what I know of Castle, it's tonally quite different from this.
Well, I saw he did Air Force One and he did End of Days, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he like fights the devil or whatever.
That's what that movie's about.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. I need to see that.
That's come up on the show at least twice before. And each time I've had to confirm for Chris that it's the movie where Schwarzenegger fights the devil and not The Sixth Day, where he's like a clone or
I
something.
could talk about The Sixth Day all day.
Oh, I remember talking about The Sixth Day.
And we could talk about the title of Hollow Man all day, but we should probably move on.
Okay, to talk about another Hollow Man, can we discuss our feelings on Kevin Bacon?
Yeah, I like him.
And I just revealed mine.
I love Kevin Bacon.
Really?
I do not like him in this movie.
I thought he was great in this movie.
I mean,
I thought
it's
he was
one of
great,
those things
too.
where it's like separating the art from the artist or the character from the actor, where like he's so fucking smarmy that even it made me reinterpret his facial features. Not just the expressions he's making, but it made me think like, God, he really does. He was a creep right out of the womb. Like he was born to play a part like this. When in reality, he's in a bunch of movies that I love him in and I find him very charming.
I do not like Kevin Bacon in I think almost anything I've seen him in. My feelings about him range from being mildly unsettled to just like intensely disliking him on screen. And it's best when he's playing an out and out villain like in this, because he just there's something about that weird gleam in his eye and his weird like mouth. He should have played the Joker. He's like
He's
perfect
impish.
Joker.
He has a very impish quality to him.
Impish, yeah, but also there's something malevolent about his presence to me. And I don't know anything about him as a human being. I don't want to cast aspersions about him as a person.
No, Patrick, how can you say these things?
He always seems like a little off to me, and I don't like him. Even in, like, say, Apollo 11, I always forget the numbers. I don't even like him in that.
Wait.
Apollo 13, sorry, yes. See, I always forget the numbers. I don't even like him in that. There's just something where it's like, I don't like this guy. He doesn't seem quite right. And I know this is another in like sort of a long lineage of just weird takes I have about like instinctual reactions to actors, but I don't like Kevin Bacon.
I can't believe you would say these things about your friends, uncles, coworkers, neighbors, father.
Oh my god.
Chris has just been waiting to drop that for like the last 2 minutes of me ranting.
Yeah, I thought I don't have any opinions about Kevin Bacon in general, but in this movie, I really liked him, and I actually thought I'll push back on what Steven said. I think that I thought he was charming and charismatic to an extent, which I later read was sort of the intent to have him be someone who's clearly an asshole, but clearly has swagger that's a little bit appealing, and I felt this way more on my second watch, I think, than my first watch, for reasons that I'll have to psychoanalyze myself as to why I warmed up to this creep since June or whenever I watched this movie.
Well, ooh. I know that is the intent, right? Like, I know that the character's written that way, that it's performed that way. I don't know. I just couldn't see past even the slightest malevolence in any given scene. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
liked him a lot better when he was invisible.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely in the performance, that he has that charisma where you get how he's gotten to the point that he has, but he's still obviously a creep and a villain. And, Chris, obviously your tech bro take was a little bit of a non-starter for me, but now it's caused me to connect this movie to The Social Network, and his performance reminds me a bit of Jesse Eisenberg in The Social Network, where he's just that antisocial but also weirdly magnetic force that is irresistible and sort of sociopathic, more than a little sociopathic. And Jesse Eisenberg is kind of similar to me, where I'm just like, I don't like Jesse Eisenberg. I think he's a good actor. I just don't like him very much. He just gives me the fucking willies, the same way Kevin Bacon does. So maybe remake Hollow Man with Jesse Eisenberg. That's my conclusion.
Let's do it. Well, I want to see Hollow Man 2, which has Christian Slater
Christian
in it.
Slater, yeah.
And that, I remember that coming out. That had to be direct to video, right?
Yeah, it was.
Did not,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But direct to video or not, I feel like there's a floor to how bad a movie can be when it's an Invisible Man movie with Christian Slater. So, and it's in my cue it range. So.
Well, just wait till the elevator drops through that floor, Chris.
Yeah, we'll see.
There's a British Blu-ray that I was looking up today that is it's so bizarre. It is a deluxe edition of both Hollow Man movies with a 52-page book of critical essays.
Whoa.
And like, God only knows what other special features. And I'm like, why did you have to include Hollow Man 2 with this? So maybe there's something to it. Like, maybe they're good companion pieces.
I hope that we're getting to the point where if someone's like trying to compile a 52-page book of reviews on a movie like Hollow Man 2, they give us a call.
Oh, I would love that. What an honor. That would be the peak of this journey. We would have to end it immediately afterward.
It would be. But no, Kevin Bacon, I liked him, and also, he does give you the willies, but I really like once he goes invisible and how he's spooky, but he's not like bah ha ha ha, ooh, I'm gonna kill you, but just like the way he interacts with his coworkers after he goes invisible is almost immediately terrifying.
Just being
especially when you can't see his expressions,
Yes.
Like, he does really great voice work in this, I think.
Yes. And I read that Kevin Bacon was actually on set for all these scenes. Like when he's in the lab with the coworkers and everything like that. They tried to shoot it. They tried to just have him. In fact, they had to bring him back, I think, because they were like, oh, we're just going to do this with voiceover. But the actors weren't responding to him well enough. So they actually brought him on set and had him walking around and would shoot shit twice and composite it together, so that people would be reacting to him in a more visceral way.
I love that.
Because this is like pre-mocap, right? Or like just before mocap became like sophisticated enough to be able to have somebody do a full performance in a movie like this.
I would say, yeah, there might have been a little bit of that, but I think I'm fascinated with how they did the special effects in this movie.
Yeah, I mean,
let's talk about that.
They look great for the most part.
After Steven finishes his point here.
What's your point, Steven?
My only point was that I'm also like mystified as to how they did this, because I assumed it was mocap for much of this, and it seems like it wasn't. but he was still on set, like reading his lines.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
he walking around and stuff. But I mean, I'm talking about when he's completely invisible.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're talking about like when he was there to deliver lines to Elizabeth Shue, say, for example, when she's talking to him and he's invisible with fucking little leads attached to him on the hospital bed. Is that what you're saying, Chris?
Right. Okay, I think I understand now, because there are very few shots where he's in the scene and he's invisible where he isn't also like doing something. Like at one point he's even just like, there's just like he's captured a fly, and there's just a fly hanging out in the corner of the screen while he's talking to someone.
Yeah.
Oh, when he has the mask on, I would assume that was him. Chris, I think, is talking about when he's fully invisible, no mask, no clothes.
Right.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
I'm understanding that now. Okay.
Yeah, the mask stuff makes sense. I assumed that was him, and then they just CG'd his eyes so that it appears to be hollow.
But yeah, the special effects just wowed me.
Yeah.
And they're still, I would say, when I first saw this movie, they wowed me. And when I watched it again for this show, they still really impressed me. But I think I could understand a little bit more about how they were done, so it lost some of the magic. But like the 1933 Invisible Man movie still wows me. I don't know how the fuck they did that.
Me neither.
I don't know. And I watched that movie, I'm like, I don't even want to know how they did that. I'm like, how did they do this in 1933? I think what they did is they got an actual Invisible Man. That's like I
think there was some dark magic involved or something.
I feel like in 1933 it's easier to make an invisible man in real life than it is to fake an invisible man in a film.
The Invisible Man movie from 1930, whatever it is, wows me. This wows me. The Elizabeth Moss Invisible Man wows me. I mean, there are three, in my opinion, fantastic movies made from this property. I would do a triple feature.
Wait, I thought you were going to
day.
give this a negative review based on something you said earlier.
Oh, no.
Now you're saying it's fantastic. Oh, my God. The scales are just tipping back and forth in my mind.
Invisible Man action is just so fun to watch for some reason.
I agree.
And it's always like, how the fuck did they do that? How did they do that? The way, he in this movie, he walks around and he, puts on a dress shirt and shit. And it's incredible. It blows my mind.
I love when he's just got the fucking like hospital blanket, that kind of like hospital color blanket on and walking around. It's so creepy. He looks like a wraith wandering around this facility.
The simple thing that wowed me in this movie was just anytime he had that mask on and you can see through to the back of his head. It's a simple thing, but especially for this coming out in 2000, I was like, that looks really convincing and really creepy. The complicated thing in this that really wowed me, the complicated effect that really wowed me, is when he's creeping on Elizabeth Shue and he's like massaging her shoulders, and just the very realistic way that her shoulders and the cloth of the shirt or top or whatever that she's wearing sort of indent under his invisible fingers was really, really convincing, which leads to a very unsettling effect. And that really kind of knocked me out too. That it's all just amazing work, especially again for something that came out 22 years ago.
And my understanding of it is like a lot of stuff, like there other than the real obvious examples, there isn't a ton of CG. I mean, there is, but not as much as you would think. Like there's scenes where he gets, doused in blood, for example. And I think he was actually wearing like a green screen suit, and you're actually seeing the blood splatter on his actual body. And they clean it up in the computer and stuff.
I think he must have been in the pool sequence too, at least in a couple shots of it. It's like there's no way that there's not another human body struggling with that guy under the water. And I was really trying to I didn't have time to go back and look, but I really want to go back and like pay attention to the lighting to figure out like how they could possibly make that work. But it's just a testament to the genius of these effects.
I think most of what you're seeing is more compositing than, say, 3D computer generated imagery, taking two images and putting them together. Like I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume that like when you see through his eyes, he's got green screen eyes, and they probably took a mask and turned it to match his head movements and actually photographed it and put that in.
I think this movie, does it right in that, like, I think there is more practical stuff in it that you just don't realize as you're watching it, because it's so hard to wrap your mind around the first or second or third time you see this movie. But I think there is a good balance of practical and CGI in most sequences. And there are some sequences where it is clear that there's a little bit too much CGI going on and it's a little distracting. But I think Verhoeven directs that stuff well, where he doesn't linger on anything that doesn't work for too long.
I mean, frankly, even I was just wowed in that very first scene with the gorilla. You know, they're strapping an invisible gorilla into a hospital bed. And even just like the way you see the gorilla's arm kind of move and like the muscle and sort of vein movement in the arm and the way that flexes the leather strap that's wrapped around its arm. Amazing. Immediately you believe it. And that's before you even see the gorilla slowly come back to visibility, starting with the veins, the heart, then the muscles, the skin, the hair. It's just, it really is astounding. And especially as an achievement that it, again, looks that good 22 years later.
I'm glad you like that, because I was expecting there to be some sentiment on our discussion that it was, bad CGI. And
there are occasional moments where it looks bad, but again, it's 22 years old, so I cut it some slack. And for the most part, it looks amazing, even if it came out today. In my book,
I wouldn't go that far. I was gonna say it doesn't look good. I was gonna say it is
like the gorilla specifically.
Yeah, the gorilla, and then Kevin Bacon does the same thing later. But here's the thing: like, I don't need it to be convincing CGI, because I thought it was such an interesting effect. Like, I've never seen that sort of, like you described the transformation very well, that sort of layer by layer. It would be fascinating to look at a medical illustration that strips somebody away layer by layer like that. So it doesn't need to be, I don't need to be in that moment being like, oh wow, that looks really realistic, because just the presentation and then what was going on, and then the images were just so interesting to me, and had a lot of imagination behind them.
Well, and it's intriguing, too, because it's not just static, but I mean, it's moving. The thing is breathing. And I mean, again, even when you see Kevin Bacon and he's kind of coming back, you can see most of his body, like minus skin. And, sometimes, it doesn't look great. It never looks bad, in my opinion. And it's still like his muscles are moving. You can see his chest moving. And it's just very disconcerting and intriguing and interesting to watch.
It makes me, I would like to see this sort of thing done with, the CGI that we have today. But I don't know if they are writing budgets like that for these kind of movies anymore.
It'd be
certainly not $90
out.
million for something like this. I mean, that blows my fucking mind. That's like 3 times more than the Elizabeth Moss Invisible Man movie cost.
Wow. And like 2/3 of it was spent on effects.
Wow.
It had to be, yeah.
How did this do box office wise? Did it make that back?
Ew, good question.
I've seen conflicting information, but both indicate that it was a hit. It's just a matter of how big of a hit it was. I know it was huge on VHS, which is where I saw it.
It grossed over 100 million. So
okay. All right. Well, you got to factor in marketing costs, but
yeah, whether or not that makes it couldn't have been a huge success because it was the last movie that they let him make.
I get the impression he walked away because he felt like this movie doesn't have any deeper meaning in it. I'm being stifled. Like, I'm not the big action sci-fi movie guy unless I'm allowed to subvert those tropes in some sort of way. Which I think there is some interesting stuff to be said about the male gaze in this, particularly as it relates to his other films.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go in the spoiler room for some of that, I think.
Yeah, no, I think there's some like really good stuff in this where like I could tell it's Verhoeven behind the camera, like for better or worse. And the male gaze is sort of compounded by the fact that there's also an invisible guy in the room somewhere too.
Oh my God, Steven's door just opened of its own volition, and I know it's his cat, but it freaked me the fuck out.
It's Sebastian.
It was Sebastian.
That's amazing.
We just hear Kevin Bacon's voice on his mic. That'd be terrifying. Get chills thinking about it. But this movie was, nominated for the Academy Award for Best Special Effects and Best Visual Effects. And, I think the takeaway here, this is practical versus CGI. This movie's using everything, and much like Jurassic Park, it's just using the best tool for the job and combining on-set techniques with computer effects and using everything for what it's supposed to be used for. So
yeah.
We don't have to have the practical versus CGI fight today.
Yeah, no. It's interesting talking about how Verhoeven kind of walked away from these bigger budget, like effects, sci-fi, horror kind of thriller things, especially in light of our earlier conversation about Cronenberg. I want to see Verhoeven make like one last balls out, crazy, gory sci-fi horror, some kind of thing. I mean, God bless him that he's making kind of lower key, edgy films, but I want to see one last big genre film from him before he leaves us,
Sure.
Oh, I would love to see it too. I just have to wonder, like, what would it take to motivate him creatively to do that again?
Yeah.
Same thing with Cronenberg, where I feel like, that one makes more sense to me because I feel like the world has finally caught up to Cronenberg's vision. And he's like, oh, they get it now. I can just make one of these movies and it'll be a hit because this is where we're at societally. Yeah. And like Titan, that got made and won a bunch of awards. So the time is right for him to return. Verhoeven, I don't know. I feel like his politics are maybe a little too complicated to fly in today's society if he were to go back and try and make a RoboCop type movie. But I'm with you. I want to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, let me be clear. I, in the spirit of our dear departed friend and former guest Bill Reiser, I want him to make whatever he wants to be making, But I do also love the mental exercise of envisioning what Verhoeven's last big gory effects political genre blowout film would be if it were to happen. But as Chris was saying, to discuss some of the more most of the action in this movie, I think it makes the more lurid action in the movie, which is all the action in the movie, really, it makes sense to go to the spoiler room. But before we go down there, I want to give a little shine to Kevin Bacon's opposite number in this movie. I think Elizabeth Shue does a tremendous job. I think I think it's actually a pretty well-written character. They give her something to work with. This is not just like a dumb damsel in distress. She's fairly capable, and she's great. This is an interesting character to watch.
Yeah, and she's definitely, performance-wise, the highlight of this movie to me. Because we get Brolin, but Brolin's just doing, he's good, but he's doing Brolin. Yeah.
All right, do we have other things to talk about that don't belong in the spoiler room?
No, well, we just gotta review it.
Well, yeah, obviously.
We almost
before
forgot.
we review it, is there anything to talk about?
No.
Okay, great. Chris, what's your review?
This is a really hard one for me.
Would you view it, cue it, screw it, or hollow it out?
I don't know what that means, but
Me neither.
I will say I think I gotta come down on cue it on this one. And it's a high cue it. Like I said, if you're looking for an Invisible Man action, this is probably the best movie on the market for you today. I love Leigh Whannell's The Invisible Man.
I mean, if you're looking for an Invisible Man in general, just good luck.
Yeah, that's true.
Zing.
The Leigh Whannell's Invisible Man is nearly a perfect film in my book, but it's not, I don't think, like a definitive Invisible Man movie because it's got other concerns on its mind than just let's watch the Invisible Man do crazy shit. If you want to see an Invisible Man do some crazy shit, this is the best movie for you to watch, and the special effects can bring me so much joy. Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth Shue bring me so much joy, but outside of that, it's pretty middle of the road. Like we said, the screenplay is pretty slight. It doesn't seem to have a whole lot to say. The performances outside of the top 2 or 3 actors are serviceable. The cinematography, serviceable. Everything about this is very serviceable year 2000 thriller movie. It has a series of action at the end, which the Invisible Man stuff's cool, but it is a little, it doesn't do a lot for me. So I can't give it a recommendation, but I certainly think people should see it if they like Invisible Man stuff, and you could do a lot worse on Netflix, and you could do a lot worse on every streaming service. There's nothing wrong with this movie. It just doesn't reach the level to where I'm going to wholeheartedly recommend it to people. So cue it. Patrick.
View it. Big view it for me. It's incredibly entertaining, and I don't need anything more from it than what it is. content warning for sexual assault. Obviously, well, not obviously, because we haven't talked about that yet, but not a movie to watch if that is a trigger point for you at all. It will not be entertaining, but very well done, well acted, effects are incredible, and it's just a fun, gory horror thriller. Not Verhoeven's best, but I enjoyed it. I was glad I finally watched it. Yeah, enjoyed it.
I'm glad you provide that little content warning on there, because that actually is one of the reasons why I wouldn't unequivocally recommend this, or just throw it out there and say view it.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
there's a good chance someone would view it on my recommendation and say, Chris, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why do you like this movie?
Yeah, and that is exactly why I added that content warning, because that's certainly a component of the plot. This character is a sexual predator.
Yes, and that content warning will extend into our spoiler room, because we're going to be discussing that stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, the character, that behavior is obviously not condoned, and the character is very much punished for it in the end, but we'll discuss that in the spoiler room. Steven.
Yeah, wow, that'll be an interesting discussion, because I go back and forth on content warnings. If this were a movie that had something interesting to say about men and sexual assault, I might be able to give it a stronger recommendation and less of sort of a trigger warning as we called them up until recently. But I'm rambling. I'm going to give this a low Q it. This movie is a technical marvel that still just completely dazzled me in so many ways, but it's hung on a very thin, almost invisible skeleton. We've seen this plot. We've seen this plot before. Most of the performances are not great. Elizabeth Shue and Kevin Bacon give us some good stuff for the crappy material they have to work with. I didn't really find either of them that complex or interesting, except in comparison to how kind of dead and airless everything else in the movie was. I did not find it particularly entertaining. I thought it almost 2 hours, given that it's utterly predictable, at least the main plot beats. It kind of dips a little bit in some places. I won't say drags. And the gross sexual assault of it all completely sucked the air out of it for me, because I didn't think it was just showing me something I didn't need to see. Some of it could have been left implied. Instead, I think it's often there just to actually titillate, which is sort of fucked up.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
we'll get into all that.
We'll get into all that, but I'm just giving the broad strokes of the reasoning behind my review. I would say if gross sexual assault doesn't bother you, and you don't expect a particularly redeeming arc, put it on the background and your eyes will tell you when to pay attention. There's some dazzling stuff in it. Otherwise, you could probably find a really good YouTube supercut of all the cool special effects sequences in it, or some of the highlights, and that's enough. The story isn't much to speak of, the script isn't much to speak of. There's nothing left after seeing it to dig into beyond the technical achievements and where it went wrong thematically,
and what the title Hollow Man means, and everything else we've been talking about for the last hour.
I forgot about that. You could lose some sleep mulling that one over. I forgot. So very low Q it from me for Hollow Man. Are we going down to the spoiler lab? We're gonna take that long elevator down there. We're gonna jump on the elevator.
We're gonna jump on the elevator. We'll see. Hopefully, it stays in working shape all the way down to the spoiler lab. But we'll see. Or maybe we won't, because it could be an invisible elevator. Welcome back. We have ridden the decaying, exploding elevator down to the spoiler basement lab, which we're going to explain what the fuck that even means in a minute. And we're here to discuss and spoil everything about Hollow Man, because you, listener, made the decision to not go and watch this masterpiece and just let us tell you everything that happens in it. Or maybe you watched it already, which good for you.
I want to lead in to the spoiler room discussion, because I want to give you guys a little bit of my context, my history with Hollow Man.
Oh, and right. I think you said you had a disturbing story about this movie, right?
It's not a disturbing, it's a funny story, but
okay.
Part of it is a little bit disturbing upon reflection, and it speaks to, I think, how this movie played to at least young boys when it came out. I saw this movie. This came out in 2000, so I was 12, but it had to have come out on VHS like a year later or something. So we'll say maybe I was 13. I wouldn't say too young to see this movie because this is the kind of shit that me and my 12 and 13-year-old friends are watching around that time. But I was going to stay at a friend's house with a couple other friends. Friend's older sister was able to rent this movie, and it was like a big deal because we'd all seen the trailer a million times. And we knew it was going to be really sexual, right?
This is a perfect movie for a 13-year-old sleepover.
Kind of. Here's something really funny that I remembered when this movie was chosen on our last ep. So there was a lot of anticipation for a certain scene in this movie among the boys in the group. And it's kind of funny to think that I turned out to be the only at least openly gay one. So we know from the trailer that that there's the scene where the gorilla, we see it like it get built up, inside out. We see all of its muscles and we get down to the bones and arteries, whatever. One of my friends, who I thought at the time was like one of the smartest people I knew, was really excited because we knew that this was going to also happen to Kevin Bacon at some point in the movie. And this friend was very excited because we were about to see what a penis bone looks like.
And we do.
This is his only resource to figure this out.
Yeah, this is basically an anatomical textbook that Kevin Bacon is going to teach us what the bone in your penis looks like.
He didn't want to go on to Alta Vista and type in penis bone.
No, because then your parents would find out.
Yeah, then your parents would find it. So you have to rent Hollow Man on VHS.
When the parents are on vacation. And you get an education. Needless to say, there was a kind of sigh of confusion and disappointment when it turns out that there is not, in fact, a bone in your penis. Sorry if that's news to either of you.
Didn't he know that from Halloween decorations? Do you think it was censored on the Halloween decorations?
Well, I mean, yeah, those didn't have an MPAA R rating. Or, God, I have to wonder if there's an NC-17 cut of this that
There's
came out
not,
of VHS.
actually.
There's not?
According to Wikipedia, this is like the only movie that Verhoeven made that didn't have to be recut.
I mean, I must say, I was shocked that you do see his penis numerous times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we see
I
the
thought
penis.
they would.
That's fine.
I thought they would cut around that, or even just like straight up just remove the penis and
Kevin Bacon was all about showing his dick. He was in Wild Things.
Well, but
you see his big old dick in that.
His muscle penis. We never see his penis.
His muscle penis.
You can see his actual penis briefly if you're looking for it. Yeah, when he's
looking for it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's anatomically correct?
Table, you can see it briefly.
Okay. I mean,
do you think it's anatomically correct though? Do you think that they really built out this is his penis without flesh?
I read a lot of Wikipedia about this movie, and so I can tell you that they actually did a full body scan of him, and they used his actual body for all the CGI stuff.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Oh, great.
There's a moment in this where you straight up see through his butthole, and his balls and dick are hanging down because he's half transformed. He's half transformed, and he's climbing onto not Elizabeth Shue. Who's the woman with the pixie haircut that's not as interesting?
I don't know her name. She's the veterinarian. I don't know her name.
There's a scene where he's I think it's onto her, climbing onto her, and he's half visible. So you just see his muscles and his tendons and his balls and his dick, and you can just see right through the crack, and there it is. Because he's it's facing the camera, butt is facing the screen, and I have never seen anything quite like it.
All right, we'll have to rewatch and look for that, I suppose.
Huh.
But all right,
eagle-eyed viewers will notice Kevin Bacon's butthole.
I'm gonna go back and look for that. I want to see it.
But look, the spoilers for this movie. It's very simple. He's a maniac, all right, and he's not able to come back. That kind of is what fucks everybody up because they make him invisible. They thought they could bring him back. They've My fucking cat's about to get a new name, Sebastian, because he's being a dick. So they're not able to bring him back. So he's stuck in invisible mode for way too long. He gets pissed off, and he decides he's going to go out on the town. So he sneaks by. Well, I mean,
just going out for a bit of the old ultra violence.
Let's get to the chase. There, he like his first night of invisibility, he molests one of his coworkers. Yeah. What is there to say about it?
I mean, I think it's as good a point as any to acknowledge what Steven said earlier, which I think is very accurate. Is we're supposed to understand that this character is not doing good things. He's not a good guy, and he does get punished for this in the end. But yes, there are 3 different scenes of molestation and or rape in this movie, and they are depicted in fairly titillating kind of ways.
Yes.
We really linger over this breast in this case, as he,
which we knew was going to be in this movie.
Yes.
Going into it, no, I'm saying me and my friends, and that was like another reason to see the movie. Is like, dude, you're gonna get to see a tit, and he's like grabbing it, but he's invisible, and like that was supposed to us, that was like exciting, like we'd never seen anything like it before. Obviously, as an adult, it's extremely disturbing.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the main thing I'm interested in talking about, because I mentioned to some of my other friends that I was watching this movie, and they all remembered seeing titties. They were like, "Oh, there's a movie where you see the titties." I'm like, yeah. And then my one friend was like, "I remember that all being in very poor taste," and I don't even know if he's seen it. And I was like, poor taste? I had not considered that it might be in poor taste. And I think part of that is because I give Paul Verhoeven so much slack, because he's been a very, sexual director, and he's had his work very misunderstood a lot, but I think he had good intentions for the most part. So I kind of just give him the benefit of the doubt. But then watching it, I was like, yeah, I think this actually is in poor taste, because even though this is a bad guy, like it almost shifts into a different mode of filmmaking. It feels like we're watching like a softcore porn movie when these scenes are playing out, and it is shot to be titillating. It's not shot to be horrifying. And I can't really reconcile that. I just think it's a fuck up.
It's like, we know this behavior is wrong, but the movie doesn't say anything about it. It just leans into it.
Right.
And I don't know, because he does. The thing I love about Verhoeven is that he's not afraid to go there. He's not afraid to show you things that make you very uncomfortable, that make you question your own beliefs, your morals, your politics. And he generally gets away with it because he's such a smart guy, and he's on like the right side of most issues. And this feels like a movie that maybe he didn't have much control over the script, like he didn't.
Well, when you put it that way, making it question your own morals or whatever, that might be the intention. Maybe he's taking this stuff and saying, all right, well, intellectually, this is wrong, but don't you like it? How do you feel about it? That might be what he's trying to do with the camera. I don't know. And that kind of resonates with me, because I think when we talk about voyeurism, and I thought about this a lot, like when the NSA like wiretap so-called scandal was coming out and everything.
At first I thought you were gonna say I thought about this when the NSA wiretapped my house. That is really where I thought that was going.
That hasn't happened, but like the Snowden leaks,
not that
and
you
everything,
know of.
And our understanding of the surveillance state, whether it be the government, whether it be Mark Zuckerberg, whatever, I think an important thing people need to understand about that is, like, it doesn't take a Sebastian Crane to spy on someone if you have the computer and you're in the NSA and you have the data of everybody in America. Like, it's, I think, a natural curiosity and natural impulse for a lot of people to abuse power when they're given to it, and that's why we have to make sure we don't give power willy-nilly to people. I mean, that's in our fucking constitution. That's what this whole setup of our government is. It assumes that power is going to be abused by most people, and so you got to really rein it in.
Well, and this abuse of power is happening, under the watch of several generals at the Pentagon, so
right. I don't think that's an accident either. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's an accident, but I also don't feel like the movie makes a strong enough statement about that aspect.
Patrick's just grimacing.
I've drank 2 beers at this point. I've drunk 2 beers at this point.
You're drunk.
One of them was 13% alcohol.
Oh, he's fucked up. He's gone. He's fading. He's fading like Sebastian Crane.
That take was too hot for my blood. Wait, what's your point? Is basically that the idea is the U.S. government is corrupt and has allowed Sebastian Crane to be Sebastian Crane, and that the government allows other Sebastian Cranes to be Sebastian Crane.
No. I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about just the nature of surveillance, the nature of voyeurism, the nature of being able to do things and spy on people and knowing you won't get caught. And how it's a seductive thing that can seduce people who even aren't psychopaths. And I think that maybe if Verhoeven is aspiring to something great with his titillating cinematography and these sex scenes, which are fucked up, that maybe he is trying to show you that and say, intellectually, you know this is wrong, but let's see if I can titillate you with it anyway and make you relate to this monster in that way.
Okay. I feel like the ingredients are there.
Interesting take.
The ingredients are there, and there is a lot of stuff about surveillance in this. I mean, one way that they try to keep track of him is by using a thermal camera, and they have this closed-circuit television. Then, because he's brilliant, he finds a way to get around that and play a little video on a loop of him in bed while he's out, committing sex crimes, so that the guy on call thinks that he's still in the room and hasn't escaped. And that's a motif that comes up in this often, but what does it all mean? I don't know. I don't think it really adds up to any kind of definitive intellectual statement. And that's where I was left very disappointed, because that is kind of what I expect from a Verhoeven movie, even though sometimes it might take me a few days or a few visits to get exactly what he's up to. Right. I've seen this movie twice over a period of 22 years, and I still feel as bewildered and lukewarm about it as I did the first time.
And maybe we're just giving him too much credit because we want to fanboy over our director who we think is so deep and subversive.
Well, and Chris, you tend to cut these movies that we review a lot of slack in general, and we have this kind of a running joke almost about you sort of parsing themes out of these films, but I obviously am someone who is willing to give Verhoeven the benefit of the doubt. We were talking about Starship Troopers before and how I think it's ridiculous that people didn't appreciate and understand what that movie was doing when it came out. And obviously, I really enjoyed this movie. I gave it a view. I don't think there's anything deep there. And I do think the sexual assault scenes are off. They are just designed to be titillating primarily. Where I will give it some credit is the scene where Sebastian literally rapes somebody, and we don't see that. I weirdly was expecting, just because Verhoeven has obviously gone there in multiple films, I expected to see that, and we don't see it. What we do see is a lot of very gratuitous tit shots before that happens. So in a weird way, it was more restrained, more restrained oddly than I was expecting, but also there's just so much, as I think Chris said before, basically softcore porn that happens before that. I don't know. It's weird. It's not good. It's not there. These are not great choices, and there's not any great, in my mind, theme or intention behind this movie.
Yeah. No, I'm comfortable saying that it's in poor taste and leaving it at that. If pushed to read meaning into it, which I'm trying to do, then we can go down all the stuff I discussed. But I think it's a bad decision.
I think this movie lays out its cards pretty damn early on, as far as just basically being juvenile escapist science fiction fantasy. Kevin Bacon tells, and I remember, this is one of three things I remembered from this movie before revisiting, is Kevin Bacon tells a very crude joke as he's about to have the serum injected, as he's walking to have the serum injected into him, which is basically, Superman sees Wonder Woman sunning herself naked on top of the Justice League's, building or, headquarters or whatever. And what is going on in this guy's mind? All he's thinking about is, if I become invisible, I can just fuck someone and get away with it and won't even know what hit him. So he tells this joke about how Superman, faster than the speeding bullet, can just fly in, fuck Wonder Woman, and she won't even know what happened to her. And then the punchline is, she asks what just happened, and the Invisible Man says, "Oh, I don't know, but my ass hurts." And I was like, okay, well, that's our movie. That's all this is really about. And it kind of is. It's just about this sort of unhinged, sexually deviant, kind of evil guy just fucking around once he gets this miraculous power. And that's not interesting to me as an adult. As a 12-year-old, that joke would have made me laugh, and I would have been like, yeah, I'll watch that movie if you just show me that scene. I want to see what he does when he becomes invisible. What can he get away with? Because I was 12 and like didn't understand sex or the complexities of it or the emotions that go with it or consent or any of that. It's just it's pure fantasy. And that's really all this movie delivers us in the end.
Yeah.
I much prefer the Lee Whannell take that is, okay, yeah, corrupt people given this extraordinary power can do very terrible things, especially if they show themselves to be corrupt and terrible before they acquire the power. But there's so many more interesting dimensions of humanity in that film. And this movie is really just like, yeah, bad guy becomes invisible, rapes people, and then becomes murderous. The end. Don't let like extremely ego-driven people get a hold of so much power.
But if that same movie were made in 1980, I feel like it would be in your horror catch-up, and you'd be saying, watch it, it's great.
I'd be saying watch it as a gonzo fucked up, can you believe you could make a movie like this at one point? Because it would have gone hard. You would have seen the rape for sure. I'm thinking Abel Ferreira could have directed this, and it would have been grisly.
So would it have been better? Do you think it would have been better if you had seen it?
No, it wouldn't have been better. It still would have been, but it would have been easier to distance myself from the context in which it was made and to be able to laugh at it a little bit, thinking, wow, we've made a lot of progress. You know, I'm thinking of a movie like Ms. 45 or something that like has elements of female empowerment in it, but in a super fucked up way, and I like it. The films like that tend to, and maybe this one will as well, tend to take on a sheen of camp over time as society progresses, and we learn, slowly these lessons that we have to be taught over and over and over again. I feel like at 22 years out, Hollow Man is still a little bit too cringy when it comes to that stuff for me to enjoy it in the way that I would if it were like a bonkers 80s movie where exactly the same shit happens.
I'm trying to process my thoughts on this because I think obviously comparing it to Lee Whannell's Invisible Man is a very, very natural comparison and a sensible one. And I love that movie. I think it's a great movie. I think it's a better movie than this one. I feel like I would rather throw Hollow Man on than just watch Invisible Man, because Invisible Man is fucking heavy. It's not entertaining, and I'm grappling with whether I only find this entertaining because I am the gender and the sexual identity that I am. I don't know. It's interesting. It's just interesting to reckon with as far as making choices about watching an entertaining movie versus a movie that makes you think about some shit. Again, I think Invisible Man is brilliant, but it's not something you just want to watch. Yeah, this is entertaining and crazy and gory and a goofy effects thrill ride. It's fun in a certain way, but is it fun for everyone? Certainly not.
Yeah. Like I said, the Lee Whannell Invisible Man is seemingly, it's like incidentally concerned with the Invisible Man itself and what and what it's like to be invisible, and it kind of takes the Invisible Man, almost turns it into a metaphor for something else, something more grounded. This is like Steven said, this is a fantasy. It's like, if you were invisible, what could you do? It's a juvenile fantasy film.
Well, and not only that, but the Invisible Man is the focus of the film. He's ostensibly our protagonist, and that's where I much prefer the approach of the Lee Whannell film, in that the Invisible Man is on the periphery. I think it made me feel more strongly about the consequences of his actions, because I was so invested in the people affected by him, or the primary person affected by him, because we're seeing everything through her lens. Whereas in this, like, we're kind of following Kevin Bacon around for most of this movie. And Elizabeth Shue gets some good moments, but that's...
I guess he is the protagonist in that sense, but he is the antagonist in that he is antagonizing literally everyone else in the movie.
I mean, yeah, I guess, I mean, I'm trying to think of a better word for it because protagonist isn't the right word, but like we're seeing much of the movie, I would say the bulk of it kind of through his lens.
Yeah, you're invited to you're invited to put yourself in his shoes, I think. And the same would go, I think, in the 1933 movie. And both of those, this is, I guess, maybe where the Leigh Whannell film does such a good job, because the 1933 film and Hollow Man both are like, look at this cool invisible guy. Look at this cool invisible guy. Look at the, oh no, he's gone too far now. And it's like kind of hard to make that adjustment. Whereas the Invisible Man, like, there's not a moment in that movie where you sympathize with the Invisible Man. He is a menace. He is a threat even before he goes invisible.
I think that's interesting, though. I mean, what you just described, making you go, oh, cool, look at the invisible guy. Oh, wait, what the fuck is he doing now? I don't know if I like that, you know, and making you confront his behavior and whether you continue to identify it and think it's quote unquote cool.
They're just
not that he does anything
movies.
cool to begin with. He never does anything cool. He's a fucking shithead to begin with, and he never does anything cool, even when he's not invisible.
That's true. But I don't know. Other than the fact that they involve Invisible Man, I don't even know if we should compare this to the recent Invisible Man, because it's like comparing a what's it?
I
like?
mean, it invites the comparison.
It's
it
like comparing like a Godzilla movie to a Jurassic Park movie, because they both have a dinosaur looking thing in them.
No, they're both Invisible Man movies, but like what is interesting, it invites the comparison, as Patrick said, and what is interesting to me is, like, obviously these are wildly different approaches, but I like to think about, especially, you know, we're starting to see news about more Universal horror movies being rebooted, and it's just interesting to think about, like, okay, well, Hollow Man is not an official Universal Invisible Man movie, but it's basically that without the title. And it's just interesting to me to think about, like, what are the possibilities for this basic story? And I think that it is somewhat weirdly faithful to the original Invisible Man, at least as far as like the structure and like what the character of the Invisible Man is all about.
Yeah, because that guy was a fuck.
Him. Yeah.
He sucked.
And I like that. I like the original movie, but I just generally don't like a movie where you're following a fuckhead for the entire film and you just see him, because it is generally a man, become more, or I'm sorry, less sympathetic as it goes along. Mm-hmm. Like it's rare for me that a movie with sort of an anti-hero works, because I need to root for them at least a little bit. Even if they're doing fucked up shit, I want to think, oh, but he can be reformed.
Strong disagree. This is not an anti-hero. You're not supposed to like this guy.
I guess what I'm saying is I wish he
Shue is the hero. She's the protagonist.
But I don't think it works. I don't think she's likable or present enough in the movie to carry it, frankly.
I mean, I disagree. That's obviously that's subjective. This is all subjective, but I thought she was.
I thought there was just something missing. I thought she was great, and I felt like I felt like the script should have leaned a little harder on her in the first 45 minutes and a little less on Asshole, because it does feel like his show for a while. And I'm like, fuck, do I really have to follow this guy around and see the way he treats people, then see him become invisible and then be even worse? Like, there wasn't enough to hang on the other character.
The problem is none of these characters have anything to do when they're not responding to an invisible thing. Because that's the movie. That's the movie. The movie is invisible effects and the thinnest dressings around them.
Sure. And that's all it's supposed to be. And that's interesting and it's fine. I just don't like it. And I don't know how you could do it in a way that I would like, to be perfectly honest.
I think we've really discussed what needs to be discussed here. I mean, I don't even know if we need to kind of tell you what happens in the rest of the movie, but I mean, he kills everybody, and except for Elizabeth Shue and Josh Brolin escape. You know, there's some, he's dead. He comes back to life.
I want to discuss like 3 key details briefly. Okay. And if you all have anything else to say about them, that's fine. If not, I just want to register that all 3 of these things I was like, what? The first one is Sebastian smashes Josh Brolin in the stomach with, I want to say, a crowbar or something. It's a deep wound. Yeah. He gets a deep stomach wound. And Elizabeth Shue, he locks Brolin and Elizabeth Shue into a freezer and turns up the temperature so theoretically they'll freeze to death. And she's trying to help Brolin, and the first thing she does is shove her fingers deep into that wound. Did either of you notice this?
Yeah, put pressure on the wound, bro.
No, she puts her fingers in the wound, and he reacts. He reacts. He's like, oh! It's like, why are you doing that? There's not a bullet in there. There's not like a projectile to remove. Because she has the line where she says, it's just hammy screenwriting, because she has the line where she says, it didn't hit any organs, so you'll be okay. Yeah. Is she like trying to check his organs?
She wouldn't have been able to know the extent of the damage if she didn't put her fingers in the hole.
Okay. All right. That makes sense to me now. Thank you. I'm glad I brought this up.
I want to get hung up on this for just a minute, because that whole sequence is fucking wild, and it's one of at least 2 examples where somebody could have easily just knocked Kevin Bacon the fuck out. I wanted her to take that crowbar, instead of going into the trap, rip it out, knock him over the head, then look at Brolin. It takes 2 seconds. And they get locked in there. She somehow turns a defibrillator into a magnet to be able to pull the latch back on the door.
Say. I love that, actually. I love the electromagnet. I love the improvised electromagnet.
It's ingenious, but it's also like so fucking over the top that
it's ridiculous.
Movie, we're going there. Like suddenly it's like a Mission Impossible film or something.
Electromagnet is a simple. You can make those in the high school class. Those are easy. Just like she did it. It was totally believable.
Okay, so I'll swap that out, actually, because I was going to bring up the electromagnet, but now I'm reminded of another like simple moment where someone could have knocked this motherfucker out. When the veterinarian, which this is a smart call, she takes bags of blood and just opens them up and dumps them all over the floor, mysteriously not splattering herself with blood at all.
And also missing a couple of spots close to her where he could easily sneak by,
and where he does. So
yeah, and he does sneak around the blood in the end too. Like, and this upset me. This was maybe the most upsetting moment in the movie to me, was when he shoots her point blank with the tranquilizer and then snaps her neck. I was just like, oh. Because she was, I liked her.
It's like the trank is enough.
She was smart, right? Yeah, it was just excessive. She was being smart. She had been smart the whole movie, and it was just a gratuitous death for a smart character.
Well, you're not allowed to be as smart as Sebastian Cain. If you ever outwit him, he gives you double vengeance.
Yeah,
he's gonna trank you and break your neck.
But I was rewatching the end of it earlier with Allison with a Y, and they were like, "Bitch, just go stand in the middle of the blood."
Yeah.
Why stand on the periphery of it? Get in the middle, because you're going to see his footsteps coming towards you no matter what.
Well, we see that in the Lee Winnell film.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Well, there's also the part where Josh Brolin domes him with a crowbar or something and knocks him out cold, and then they're like, "All right, that's good enough. Let's go." He's probably not going to get back up and kill me.
Yeah, I mean, the end of this movie is a little bit of a pileup of those kind of classic horror movie, like, oh my god, just do blank, like
it becomes a generic slasher for the last like 20 to 30 minutes. And it's very like by the numbers, and it's entertaining, and there's some fun moments in it, but
yeah,
it suddenly becomes like, it suddenly becomes you're like, oh, this is a $90 million movie all of a sudden. Like, there's big sets, there's explosions, there's pipes and smoke, and the Invincible Man seemingly has become...
The Invincible Man, he is! You're right.
He really, he's the Invincible Man all of a sudden. Like, because he Elizabeth Shue, like, blow torches the fuck out of him, like empties the tank to do whatever on a cellular level, because his flesh is dying, it becomes visible, and like she just keeps doing this over and over and over again, and he's still alive, and then it just goes for like another 16 minutes after that. Like, I remember looking at the time being like, he's dead now, right? No, 16 minutes. How is this happening? What is it going to take to finally kill him, and why does he have this power all of a sudden?
Well, and we wind up in an elevator shaft. There's a broken elevator. Josh and Elizabeth are trying to crawl up out of this shaft. The elevator is shooting up and down. It's breaking. They're pressing themselves up against the side of the shaft. I would love to know if any of this actually
I just love how many times you keep saying shaft, and it's very in keeping with the prurient nature of this movie.
I just don't need elevator shafts. I just don't need elevator shafts in movies anymore. I can't relate to them. I can't relate to an elevator shaft. Get them out of the fucking movie. I don't like them.
The elevator shaft was the best character in this movie.
We teleport now. I don't want to see a fucking elevator. Come on.
But okay, so they're climbing up this broken ladder that the elevator has completely destroyed as it's been crashing up and down this shaft. And we think that Sebastian is dead. He grabs Elizabeth Shue's leg and drags her back down on top of the elevator that is like crash landed several floors below. He's trying to choke her out. He's trying to kiss her. He's trying to do his normal shit. She leads him on in a kiss and then somehow knows to like stomp on this sort of cable connection behind her to disconnect the elevator from its remaining cable while she hangs onto it so that he falls while she holds on. And I was just like, is this how elevators actually work? Number one. Probably
she
not.
minored in elevator repair. She majored in biochemistry, minored in elevator repair.
Number two, how did she know how to do this? Also, number three, I was satisfied because he falls into a giant fucking fireball. Moments earlier, I had one of those moments that are rare for me where I actually like spoke loud. I was like, this motherfucker, how is he fucking back again? Because I knew it was going to happen, but also it was just frustrating when he did show up again.
It works on that level, yeah.
And then he falls into a fucking fire pit, so it was satisfying. Yeah. And that's really all I have to say. It was frustrating and deeply satisfying all at the same time.
Well, and then we get the Indiana Jones thing where she's fucking still, there God knows how many floors beneath this complex at this point. She's still, after everything that's happened, just casually has the strength to hold on to this cord.
Yeah.
Brolin has his back up against the ladder and is just kind of hanging there, and they hold each other, and she's just like, oh, I'm so glad that's finally over. And they look so relaxed, and I'm like, you guys have like 30 flights to climb on this ladder.
Well, they
like,
make a final God reference. There's a final God reference too about how he's not God anymore.
Oh God, not anymore.
Right. And I was thinking,
that's that guy. He typed that in the screenplay and wrote like fade out, and then
he just fucking they jerked off. He signed the script with
Banderas gif where he's like just sitting back from the computer smirking.
I've never seen that. I want to see that. But that is literally what the movie does. The next scene is them like walking out of the hospital, and it's a wide shot pulling back as ambulances pull up. Credits roll. We're done.
We're done, which, I kind of wanted a scene. I kind of wanted a scene with like the general, like, 2 weeks later being like, oh, we found the serum. We're going to put it into this guy. And it's,
well, that's Hollow Man 2. I mean, I'm sure that's where it picks up.
Yeah, sure.
I did think, though, it's funny that you mentioned that about how they were, hanging onto the ladder or whatever. And I think it was because I had this weirdly anxiety inducing night. There was weird shit going on in my apartment building that was producing physical anxiety reactions in me. And I was like, holy shit, these people just went through all this and they're just like casually hanging onto this ladder, like, quipping and stuff. I was like, I would be shaking. I would be unable to breathe. How are these people doing this?
Right. Instead, they look like the cover of a romance novel hanging there.
It's almost like it's a Hollywood movie or something.
It was, yes, we've seen this kind of thing in Hollywood movies over and over again, but from Verhoeven, to see this, I was like, there's gotta be something more, and then it just ends, just credits. It's like like those 80s back to Cronenberg. His movies used to just, like in the 80s, like The Fly, Dead Zone, they would begin in the middle of an important moment. As soon as the climax happened, it would end, and you would just get credits. His movies are like a lean, like 88 minutes. And it was always so jarring, but his movies left me things to think about, at least.
Yeah. He was just like, all right, fuck it, I'm going back to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
He was like, second unit, finish the movie. do the last shot. Anyway.
Wow.
Well, this is one of those episodes where we've now, I think, discussed it almost as long as the movie itself, which I was not expecting. I watched this twice, and I was like, this is a simple movie. We're going to talk about like Kevin Bacon, effects, sexual assault, and that's probably it, But and basically that was what we talked about, but it took us 2 hours.
Really, one of my favorite movies my favorite type of movies to talk about, where it's simple premise, but there's a lot to chew on.
Yeah. And
I think there is, a little bit to chew on, at least. Yeah. What the hell are we watching next time? Steven, it's your turn to pick.
Guys, that was a lot of fun. We're going to go from Invisible Men to invisible, otherworldly, malevolent spirits. I'm trying for a segue here. We're going to watch His House. an end film from 2020 that is one of my favorite movies I've seen in, the last 4 or 5 years. I'll read you the synopsis, which is spoiler free, but just to kind of tee this up and get people excited for it. A refugee couple makes a harrowing escape from war-torn South Sudan, but then they struggle to adjust to their new life in England, and there's an evil presence lurking beneath the surface of their new home. I really enjoyed this. It's super creepy. There were a couple scenes in it that were like the most scared I've been watching a movie in the last couple of years. Definitely turn out the lights, put your headphones on if you can, crank up the sound, and I think this is going to be rife for some intriguing discussion on our next
What do you
step.
think the title "His House" means?
Is it about the Lord?
Is it about the male gaze?
We will get into it.
All right.
Oh,
Can't
boy.
wait.
All right. Well, until
Taking us
then,
into more serious territory for the next episode is what I'm trying to say here.
I want to watch that for a while, actually. But again, these Netflix movies, they're like Netflix originals. They're not going anywhere, so there's never a hurry to watch them. So I'm glad I have a reason. I'm still trying to see the fucking Babysitter.
stop watching fucking 60-day engagement or what the fuck were you watching? The 90-day fiance or some shit?
Yeah.
Dan, what the fuck are you doing with your life? All right, well, I'm going to tell you what to do with your life in the meantime. Go follow us on all your social media. Why don't you watch The Suicide Squad, you fuck?
Why don't you guys watch Possession, god damn it?
Loan me the blue. You son of a bitch.
Patrick had it for a year and he didn't even touch
to get
it.
that blue.
He didn't even jerk off to the cover. I mean, come on.
Wow. Well, why don't you, the listener, you fuck, go to our social media at AmonCast, EHMONcast. Give us a follow, give us a like, give us a share, give us a retweet, give us a comment. Send us a DM. Slide into the DMs. We love the DMs.
Tell us if you were titillated or appalled by the actions of Sebastian Crane in The Hollow Man.
No, if you were titillated, just delete all of your social media accounts and stay quiet for a few years.
Tell us if you were titillated or appalled by our thoughts about Sebastian Crane. That's the more important question.
Let us know if we're canceled.
If you're related to Kevin Bacon by fewer than 6 degrees, reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Let us know. We're curious. Get on your podcast provider of choice. Leave us a review. Tell us if you're related to Kevin Bacon, but make sure you give us 5 stars. That's the important part. Give us a review. We don't give a fuck what it really says in the review. Just say, I'm Kevin Bacon's son, Joseph Bacon, and I love this podcast.
Francis Bacon.
Francis Bacon. I created the red dragon draped in the sun, whatever that painting is called. That movie. It's about me. I love this podcast. I give it 5 stars. Follow us, review us, etc. Go to our website, broken website, every horror movie on Netflix.com.
Dude, I bet Sebastian Crane could fix our website.
Literally anyone probably could at this point.
Dude, that is me. When I'm working on this fucking website, I am the first 5 minutes of this movie where I'm just in a chair staring at the
Da Vinci
ceiling.
never slept. God damn it! I'm gonna fix this shit tonight.
And you could be like Da Vinci when you have an Every Horror Movie on Netflix t-shirt on. It's basically Da Vinci quality illustration, and you can find it at our merch store, which is also on the website at everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say. That's all we all have to say. Thank you. Thank you, the listener. Hey, this is my show. Let me finish.
Oh, what? All right. Well, I'll talk to you guys off cast about that remark. I'm gonna set the record straight. God damn it.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to this incredibly discursive discussion. I'm Patrick.
For it.
I'm Chris.
I'm Steven.
And we'll see you next time.
I feel hollow as fuck right now.